back everyone to Top 10 Movies of the Decade. I'm Henry Higgins and we've reached the final of the yearly countdowns before we get to the grand finale. It's 2019, so we're going to be going through another 10 movies to see who will join Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Drive, Dredd, Evil Dead, Mad Max Fury Road, Zootopia, Get Out and Upgrade from the previous video. So that's the 9 movies that are in the final episode already, and in this video we're going to find out what the 10th movie is to join them. However, before we get to that, there are 9 other movies that almost made the cut but are definitely worth you seeking out if you haven't seen them already. So without any further ado, let's get cracking with the film that came in at number 10. In at number 10 is the most recent entry in a long-running franchise, one of my favourites. It's Terminator Dark Fate. Directed by Tim Miller, with James Cameron on as an executive producer, kind of like an overseeing role, like Joss Whedon had in the early days of the MCU. Stars Linda Hamilton, bringing her back to the franchise as a grizzled, aged Sarah Connor. Arnold Schwarzenegger returns as the T-800. It also brings in Mackenzie Davies, Natalia Reyes, and Gabriel Luna, with Diego Boneta rounding out the principal cast. As with most Terminator movies, the cast is kept small because they're generally road movies. Terminator 2 is still the pinnacle of the series for me, closely followed by the original Terminator. They're like this. That said, Josh and I did enjoy the other movies in the series. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines did have its flaws, and it was very hard to follow up on what was considered the perfect sequel and the perfect end to the story that was being told. There are plenty of great things in the movie, such as Skynet being switched on and going self-aware, actually seeing that happen, seeing the first run of Terminators, T1s, which are essentially the prototype HKs, coming active and then starting just killing everything. The mini flying HKs, again the prototype for the larger ones that you see in the Future War scenes from the first 2 movies. That was all fantastic, and it had the balls to end with Judgment Day happening. The movie ended with Skynet launching the nuclear missiles to wipe out humanity. That took a lot of guts. Terminator Salvation did something else. It took us to the Future War, and that tried something different. That was a movie people had been clamouring for a while, and again, it didn't stick the landing all that great, but there were some fantastic elements in that film, including the first T-800 Model 101 Arnie coming off the production line. So again, there was nice little touches there, and Genesis had like the Back to the Future 2 going back to the Future 1, it did a fantastic thing of revisiting old scenes, so there was a lot of nostalgia there, but twisting it because of the narrative they were telling. What ruined that movie for a lot of people wasn't John Connor's heel turn to become the antagonist. It was that the twist was given away in the trailer, and that's not the director's fault. Marketing people are separate from them, like the studio in a sense, and they pick and choose what footage to put in the trailer, and they chose that, and that just put people off straight away. So despite enjoying each of the Terminator movies following Terminator 2, they weren't that well received, especially with the 4th and the 5th movies, Salvation and Genesis, were attempts at rebooting the franchise. Terminator Salvation was supposed to be part of a Future War trilogy. You can tell by how that movie ends. So they weren't that well received overall. So we have this now, Terminator Dark Fate, which is the 6th movie. It is the 3rd attempt at rebooting the franchise, and it is an immediate follow-up from Terminator 2. So Terminator 3, 4 and 5 are like alternate timelines. They didn't happen. So with this, the movie picks up a couple of years after Terminator 2, where Sarah Connor and John Connor are on like a beach, and the de-aging technology for Linda Hamilton as a younger Sarah Connor from the Terminator 2 era, which was 1994, the movie was set, and the CGI de-aging of John Connor's face onto as a different actor's body, because obviously he had to be a small kid still, were fantastic. But having John Connor killed at the outset was a massive shock. It was a huge shock. And it instantly turned a lot of people off the movie, like completely. There and then they were out of the movie. But for me, I thought it was a bold choice, because at this point now we know John Connor is dead. So future John Connor, who galvanizes humanity after the war, after the bombs have dropped, will not exist. So what will the future hold? So it suddenly changed the entire dynamic, especially when it comes to Sarah, who no longer has John. She's embittered. And also, as you come to find, the actual T-800 model that killed John. It affected and changed him. What I didn't like about the movie, as much as I really enjoyed it, what I didn't like was the crux of the story. It's just Skynet taking over by a different name. Obviously, some things are different. It's an alternate timeline, so the machines look a little different and such like. But it's essentially the same thing. It's not called Skynet, but it's essentially doing the same thing. It's an AI that decided humanity was the enemy. It launched a nuclear attack, wiped most of us out. Humanity is then fighting back. The story's the same. All they've done is change the colour of the enemy's uniform. That said, the action in the movie is astounding. Mackenzie Davies is amazing as Grace, while Gabriel Luna, who had been Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and done a magnificent job there, is absolutely intense and terrifying as the Rev 9, which is a Terminator cross between the T-800 and the T-1000, though it's not liquid metal, it's like nanotechnology, it's nanobots, which is similar to what John Connor was in Genesis. It's a little like that. And the fact that he can then split and become two Terminators is played to great effect. As I say, the action is great, comedy is well placed in the movie, and Linda Hamilton as this battle-weary Sarah Connor who gets coordinates to turn up where a Terminator is going to appear and she just takes it out. She is the glue that holds the whole thing together. She is what makes the movie work. And then when Arnie comes into the movie proper, and the dynamic between those two, what we think of Natalie Reyes' character, and what we're led to believe, then we see what her actual fate, her dark fate, is. That is an astounding thing as well. And they play with it how she and Grace, Mackenzie Davis' character, are actually linked, and how that is. So while it wasn't perfect, it was a great return to form. It was the best Terminator movie since Terminator 2. And for that, Dark Fate is our number 10 for 2019. Number 9 sees us revisiting characters from a previous movie on an earlier video, and it's a return to M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable universe with Glass. And Glass is obviously named after Elijah Price, played by Samuel L. Jackson in the movie. This, again, is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It brings back Bruce Willis after his cameo at the end of Split. He returns as David Dunn. James McAvoy returns as Kevin Wendell Crumb / The Horde and all those characters. Samuel L. Jackson returns as Elijah Price, so we get all of those. Anya Taylor-Joy is in the movie. She was the survivor of the Beast in Split. Sarah Paulson is in there. Spencer Treat Clark returns as David Dunn's son from the original Unbreakable, and he was the actor who played that character, so that's some excellent continuity. And Charlene Woodard is also in the movie as the mother of Elijah Price, who was also the same actress who played her in Unbreakable. Add to that, M. Night Shyamalan is in the movie as well, and we get a nice little continuity that the character, because he was in all 3 movies as well, it's the same character. As we touched upon when we did Split, Unbreakable and Split are both excellent movies. and the David Dunn cameo at the end of Split, confirming that it was a follow-up to Unbreakable and they exist in the same universe. That created an amazing amount of hype for this movie, which is why there wasn't as much of a delay and a turnaround in time between Unbreakable and Split and this one. Bringing back the actors, as I mentioned, who played the roles previously in Unbreakable and in Split, adds to the whole cohesiveness of the film. It just gives a great sense of continuity. And David Dunn, having continued his superhero activities, as Unbreakable was his origin story, he's now known as the Overseer, with Joseph, his son, assisting him as the man in the chair. That all adds up to again, and it shows what's happened with them between Unbreakable and the events of Split and the events of Glass. James McAvoy is back and he excels even more than he did in Split. There are more personalities in this movie. Obviously, it's the same amount of personalities he had as a character, but in Split, we only got to see a smaller amount of those characters. In this, more of them come out, though some, like Patricia, are still more dominant as personalities. They come to the fore more often. Again, what really sells this is his vocal tones, speech patterns, the way he holds himself, his body language. You instantly know when he has switched characters, when he was one character and now he's another, even though physically he hasn't moved his location even. He has just changed his posture, the way he walks, sometimes what he wears, he'll take something off or he'll put something on. He should have been nominated for all the acting awards going for his performance in this movie. His ability to turn on a dime and change who he was, that's acting. And if you're going to say who was the best actor, it's someone who can play multiple roles in a single scene and switch between them and just make it look easy. That's what James McAvoy did in this movie. The Beast isn't around as much due to the way the movie works, but when he is there, he is still as terrifying as ever. He's ferocious, with a wonderful touch being his first confrontation with the Overseer, David Dunn. The Beast has kidnapped some cheerleaders, and he's obviously going to eat them, because that's what he does. However, they're chained up, and the Overseer gets to know, he's followed them, he knows what's going on. He has his, sixth sense touch. When he touches someone, you can see that they've done something. So that happens, and he follows the Beast back to his lair, and they get in a fight. And what's amazing is the Beast can't break him, which is the Beast's MO. He breaks human bodies, and he can't break this one. And the surprise that he can't break someone intrigues him. In a scene later in the movie, the Beast even refers to him as the Unbreakable Man when he asks Elijah Price who he is. Speaking of Elijah Price, Samuel L. Jackson is slightly underused as the character, but when he is on screen, he is absolutely magnificent, with his underusage being explained towards the climax of the film. It was intentional because of what was going to happen. This obviously leads to scenes with all three of them interacting, which are wonderfully done, with amazing use of colour. Each one has their own identifiable colour. Beast is yellow, David Dunn is green, and Elijah Price is purple, which is Samuel L. Jackson's favourite colour, hence why he had a purple lightsaber in the Star Wars prequels as well. Sarah Paulson's character being at the centre of a twist isn't a surprise, but the double bluff on what the actual twist is amazingly well realised. The way it goes you down, because Shyamalan works on twists, that's what he does. And in this one, you knew there was going to be a twist, but then you get a twist of who Sarah Paulson's character really is. That then leads to David Dunn being killed, which really pissed me and Joshua off. But that was the intent, that was the emotion that Shyamalan was going for. So job well done there. Excellent script writing, excellent direction, excellent acting, excellent cinematography. Everything was fantastically done. As a climax to the East Rail 177 saga, it is a suitable end to the story. Everything has been tied up it then opens up the world of superheroes and villains, superhumans that Elijah Price mentioned would be among us, opens that up to everyone, and that's how the movie ends. Josh and I love the entire trilogy. We adored this movie, and it is fully deserving of the number 9 slot for 2019. Creeping in at number 8 is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel, the long-awaited sequel to The Shining. It's the Mike Flanagan directed Doctor Sleep. And this, as I said, is a follow-up to The Shining. It stars Ewan McGregor as an adult Danny Torrance. It has Rebecca Ferguson, who I fell in love with in this movie. She is stunning in this film. She is mesmerizing. Her acting performance is one that jumps from many different emotions. She's flirty, she is pleasant, sweet, nice, then she's cruel, then she's nasty. She's downright evil at times, and she is majestic in this film. We also have Kylie Curran, Cliff Curtis, Zan McClanan, and Emily Allen Lind as the newest recruit to the Knot, which is the villainous group of psychics who are out to kill other psychics and steal their shining, which they call steam. They kill someone, and at their point of panic, they can absorb their psychic energy, and that feeds them. So they're almost like psychic cannibals in that sense. The film does work, whether you've seen The Shining or not. Although having seen The Shining will obviously add a lot of layers and a lot of reference points to the movie. It will expand the experience. Ewan McGregor is fantastic in the lead role of Danny Torrance. There is a nice little scene with his mother earlier on that shows why he is the way he's an alcoholic, but then it's his redemption story. And the reason he's called Dr. Sleep is because of The Shining. He can obviously see ghosts, he can see dead people. And because of that, he's in a nursing home where essentially the elderly go to die. That's what they're there for. But he lulls them into a nice sleep because he knows who's waiting for them. He can mention things to them, he can talk to the loved ones for them before they pass. And he lulls them off to sleep rather nicely, hence the residents of the home calling him Dr. Sleep. That's where the name comes from. As I mentioned, Rebecca Ferguson is just magnetic as Rose the Hat. Like, seriously, every time she was on screen, I was just rapt. I was enraptured with what was going on in the movie whenever she was on screen. While the Knot, as a cult, are genuinely scary. They have some intense moments. None more so when they kill the young kid with the baseball mitt. That is a terrifying scene, and it shows the lengths they will go. In addition to all of that, Kylie Curran as Abra Stone, someone who has the Shining even more powerful than Danny Torrance does. I think this is her first role. It is an excellent turn from her as well, especially for one so young, that she holds her own with these seasoned actors and actresses in this big production. It's wonderfully done. And the climax of the film, when they go back to the Overlook Hotel, brings proper chills, especially when all the nostalgia touches come in. You see certain things, you hear certain things. And Jack Torrance is there, not played by Jack Nicholson, but it's obviously Jack Torrance, even though he doesn't say he is Jack Torrance. And then there's new terrors to terrify the audience also. It is a film that has its flaws, but as a horror movie, it does its job well. And as a sequel to The Shining, it does itself justice. And it also sets up future movies should Stephen King ever write another book, or should the studio just decide to make a movie with no book to adapt. Dr. Sleep did not put me to sleep, and Rose the Hat skips her way in to number 8. Coming in at number 7, Like a Lightning Bolt, is another comic book adaptation. It is another entry in the DCEU, and along the lines of what we previously discussed with Wonder Woman and Aquaman, this is another step in the right direction. The DCEU had found its footing, it knew what it was doing, and in this one, we have Zachary Levi taking on the title role of Shazam, which is... he's almost like Superman in a way, but he's a much older hero. We also have Mark Strong as the villain, Asher Angel as the young Billy Batson, Jack Dylan Grazer, Jimon Houzo, who has appeared in the MCU and the DCEU, Grace Fulton, and John Glover. While this is part of the DCEU, it is the most separate. It is essentially a completely separate story from the main series, except for a scene towards the end with Superman. It also has little nods. It also has little nods to Batman v Superman and Justice League and things like that as well, but it's essentially a standalone thing. Shazam is possibly the best film in the DCEU so far. Now that's high praise because Aquaman was excellent as well, as was Wonder Woman, but Shazam just seemed to work. What is interesting is we have Zachary Levi and Asher Angel as the superpowered Shazam and the kid Billy Batson, and both are great, portraying a range of emotions a kid would have if he was given these powers, but also faced with traumas he's endured over his life. And what's interesting is obviously Zachary Levi is a grown man, massively muscled, in great shape man, but he still has the mind of a child, and he still has to act like a child. So his mannerisms are almost exaggerated versions of what Asher Angel's Billy Batson has been doing. Mark Strong is a great villain. He has played the villain before in Kick-Ass. He has also played the hero in certain movies as well. In this, he's a villain, and he's a villain that is somewhat justified in his actions, in his endeavours to obtain powers for himself. He was teased with getting the powers of Shazam by old Shazam, Jimon Houzo, and had that taken away from him. So that's quite cruel. His father was an arsehole as well, and his brother was a bit of a dick too. So he had a lot going against him. And the 7 deadly sins, which is what he ends up manifesting and using, they are grotesque and they are brutal, especially for a PG-13 film. Particularly in the boardroom scene where Savannah, Mark Strong's character, goes and visits his father and throws his brother out the window. Or one of the 7 deadly sins, throws his brother out the window. And then they just kill things, and it's nasty for a movie of this age. And you're not expecting that. You're expecting a cutaway maybe, and it does cut away eventually, but not as soon as you think it will. So he has equivalent powers to Shazam based on the 7 deadly sins inhabiting his body. So he's like possessed with the 7 deadly sins through his eye, and so he's possessed by the 7 deadly sins who access him through his eye and can come back out again through his eye. And the effects for that are amazing. I mean, the effects overall are astounding across the whole movie, and the comedy and the wit and the warmth, and having the foster family be nice and all the foster kids be nice. That's great. The evolution of Billy Batson learning what powers he has as Shazam and how they work and how you can use them, that is fantastic. Then it's brought to a grinding halt when he meets Savannah, and this is now someone who can intimidate him. Which then reminds you that he's just a kid faced with this monstrous, essentially a demon-possessed adult who is going to kill him and take his power. So all of that adds up to a fantastic shift in tone. There are some nice knowing nods as well, including Savannah doing a monologue from too far away for Shazam to hear, which is a nice touch because normally in movies it doesn't matter what background noise there is, they can hear each other. The climactic battle is excellently done, and what's fantastic is because Shazam stars... and what is really well done, because Shazam is the initials of all the things he's got. So it's like the wisdom of Solomon, the lightning of Zeus, the strength of Hercules, that kind of thing. The speed of Mercury. So with that, they rely on the wisdom of Solomon rather than any brute force to win the day. And another excellent moment is if you say the name Shazam while holding the staff, you get the powers of Shazam. So this is wonderfully done because a lot of the people in the Foss family are kids. They all become adults as well. And the cast chosen to play the Marvel family are all nice touches, they're all famous faces, and you have a look and you go, oh, it's him, oh, it's her. And that is wonderfully done. The whole thing, and there's a nice little in-joke where they say, hold the staff and say my name, and they say Billy. That got a lot of laughs in the theatre. Shazam is just a wholesome movie. It's got a lot of heartache in it, as you can imagine from a story about a child who was abandoned. It has a lot of comedy, it has a lot of pathos, it has a lot of action, and it ends on a perfect note to follow up with the sequel. And they hint at the sequel, and they also hint at there being another, and that other is Black Adam, which is very exciting because The Rock is going to be Black Adam. Black Adam is referenced in this movie. And The Rock is going to be Black Adam. At DC Fandom, we got to hear from The Rock. We got kind of an idea of what the film is going to be. And it looks like it's going to be a stunning follow-up to Shazam. As an origin story, it is excellent. As a comic book movie, it's excellent. As an entry in the DCU, it's wonderful. And Shazam finds itself at number 7. In at number 6 is an MCU movie, and it is the follow-up to Infinity War. However, it's set before Infinity War, and ironically, it has the name that Shazam originally went with. It's the Brie Larson starring Captain Marvel. It's directed by Anne Boden and Ryan Fleck, who are not coming back for Captain Marvel 2. That is going to be the director of Candyman, stepping into that role. The movie itself, as I say, stars Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, Samuel L. Jackson as a de-aged Nick Fury, Ben Mendelsohn is in as Talos, leader of the Skrull faction that we have in the film, Jude Law, Jimon Hounsou is in again, Lee Pace, Lashana Lynch, Gemma Chan, Annette Bening, and Clark Gregg returning as Phil Coulson. And before this was released, it was threatened to be overshadowed by the crybaby, misogynist, sexist, racist idiots, most likely the same ones who tried to derail The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. They were getting their knickers in a twist over a quote that Brie Larson never actually said. The review bombing before the general release didn't help either, but fuck them. The movie was fantastic. And anyone who has a problem with it, outside of just not liking the movie because they didn't like the movie, they are arseholes of the highest order. They are entitled. They feel that they should dictate what should and shouldn't happen. They do not have that right. The de-aging effects on Sam Jackson and Clark Gregg are amazing. More so for Samuel L. Jackson because he's on screen for the majority of the runtime of the movie. He genuinely looks like he would have looked in the mid-90s. The supporting cast, while kind of pigeonholed as archetypes, they do well with what they're given. Jude Law is obviously going to be the main antagonist of the movie, even from his first scene, but they have fun getting there, and Brie Larson herself is amazing. She is a marvel as Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. A big complaint, mostly from the aforementioned crybaby, racist, sexist, misogynistic idiots, was that Carol Danvers had no growth through the movie. Now, that does a disservice to the writing and the performances, as the growth was emotional and personal rather than physical. In that respect, Carol goes through a lot of growth. She also does go through growth with her powers. She learns how to manifest it and control it more. Then when she learns what's going on with the Kree Supreme Intelligence and the Kree warriors trying to keep her in check with the inhibitor in the back of her neck, which she realises is actually inhibiting her. It's not there to protect her from her and others. It's there to protect them from her. So when she removes that and she can go full binary, there's also a physical growth as well. But in this movie, this is an emotional arc, and to say she had no growth is ridiculously wrong. I touched upon Ben Mendelsohn in the previous video when we talked about Ready Player One, how he is an excellent villain. He is an excellent villain in the Star Wars series. He's an excellent villain in Ready Player One, and in this, he's cast as the Skrull leader, and from the comics, the Skrulls are villains as well, so it naturally lends us to believe that he is going to be the main villain of the film. And I would say for the first third, maybe the first half of the movie, he is portrayed as the antagonist of the story. However, When that is switched and we get the rug pulled from us, when he turns up at Monica Rambeau's house and explains what's going on and shows he's not actually the villain, that is a fantastic twist, with Talos and the Skrulls being the good guys being an excellent left-hand turn we weren't expecting. Captain Marvel is a great movie. It's got wonderful effects, superb action, and a kick-ass soundtrack. Great chemistry within the cast, great chemistry between Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson, and it sets us up for Endgame nicely, like why Nick Fury has the pager. That's all set up, and it's a lovely little period piece where we could have a Captain Marvel 2, which is still set before Infinity War and Endgame, showing what she was doing while the rest of the Avengers stuff was going on. Because obviously, if you've seen the movie, she is the reason why the Avengers are called the Avengers. It was her call sign when she was a pilot. So she's been linked with this throughout the entire timeline that we've seen of the MCU from the 90s onwards. Obviously, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and the early Ant-Man stuff predate that as well. But it fits in nicely. It sets future things up very well. And I wouldn't mind seeing a Captain Marvel 2 set before Infinity War just to see what she's been up to. Although a Captain Marvel 2 after Endgame would also work well. It's all connected, and Captain Marvel connects with this list at number 6. Whipping its way in at number 5, we stay in the MCU, and it's the first movie post-Endgame. It's the second solo movie for the webhead in the MCU. It's Spider-Man Far From Home. Keeping with the home aesthetic, because obviously the first one was Homecoming, rumours that the third movie for Spider-Man in the MCU is also going to have home in the title, so that could be interesting. Some people have said it's Homesick, because he may be on the run based on the end of this movie, which we'll touch on. John Watts does an amazing job with the direction of this film. There are so many fantastic things in this that we have him to thank for. Tom Holland returns as Peter Parker Spider-Man. Jake Gyllenhaal is in as Quentin Beck Mysterio. Samuel L. Jackson is Nick Fury. Zendaya is back as MJ. Kobe Smulders is in there as Maria Hill. Jon Favreau is back as Happy Hogan. JB Smoove is there as one of the teachers. Jacob Batalon is back as Ned Leeds. Martin Starr is in the movie. And Marisa Tomei returns as the hottest Aunt May we've ever had. After the lackluster reception to Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man movies, which I enjoyed, there were flaws, but I enjoyed them. Sony loaned the character to Marvel and he debuted in Civil War. That was an excellent debut. Tom Holland is perfect as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So then we got Homecoming, which was about a small-scale threat, relatively speaking, to the rest of the MCU with their Avengers level threat, in the shape of the Vulture. However, this one is a larger situation. I mean, Spider-Man's been to space at this point, which they touch on in the movie. And this introduces the concept of a multiverse. It expands on magic and monsters. There's a lot going on. And a wonderful touch is having the elementals in the movie be based on existing characters in the Spider-Man canon. So when we saw the trailer at first, the first one does look like Sandman. We also see Hydro Man. There's a version of Molten Man. So that gave us, when we were watching the trailer, it gave a bit of credence to these characters actually being what they are, adding believability to Quentin Beck's claim that he is a hero who lost his world and has come to save ours. Speaking of him, Jake Gyllenhaal is excellent as both the hero Mysterio, Quentin Beck, and the actual dirtbag behind the costume when his plot is revealed. The entire premise of what him and his group are doing is awesome continuity. Each has been wronged in some way by Tony Stark. It adds depth to the story and shows how things weave in and out of the rich history of the MCU. Even going back to the original Iron Man, with the tech that Obadiah Stane shouts at because he can't build an arc reactor when Tony Stark built one from a box of scraps. So that whole continuity thing is awesome. What tops that in this movie if not all of the MCU, even if all comic books, all movies, is the way Mysterio's illusions are put on screen. Um, the minor ones are excellent, but most impressively is the main scene where we now know he is the bad guy. Peter Parker knows he's the bad guy and he goes to fight him. And then we're put into this world which is just ripped from comic book panels, ripped from scenes from animation, and put on screen as perfectly as you could imagine a Mysterio illusion being. It I've never been more impressed by a page to screen adaptation of a sequence and how I visualized it in my head. Aesthetically astounding how they came up with it, the concepts and how they put it to screen, and how they had it overlay what is there in the real world, because it's kind of like augmented reality with the sense of there are structures there, but Mysterio has put like a coating over it so you see it as something else, which is why Peter punches a wall, he dive bombs into the ground. It's all amazingly done. As I mentioned, this does follow Endgame. Tony Stark has died, and Peter is feeling it. Obviously, a lot of the characters in the movie are feeling it, but Peter is feeling it. His mentor is gone, and he's feeling the weight of being an Avenger without his mentor there. The downbeat sadness in Peter is expertly played by Tom Holland. It's counterbalanced with the happiness that he has when he's with MJ and his friends on the school trip, the titular Far From Home, while Martin Starr, as Roger Harrington, confirmed to be the tech that is bribed by pizza by Ed Norton in The Incredible Hulk. So that's another great piece of continuity. He's fantastic comic relief as one of the supervising teachers on the trip. The film itself is astounding. The action in it is immense. There's so much going on. And while it is a fitting into Phase 3, it also throws a few curveballs when you realise that Nick Fury and Maria Hill have been Skrulls the whole time in this movie. Nick Fury's on a space station with the Skrulls, which I think is going to be the Needle for Sword. So that's going to be an interesting how that develops. Then we have to wonder, well, how long has Talos been Nick Fury on Earth? Was it just for the events of this movie? Has it been for a longer period of time? Has Maria Hill always been a Skrull? That opens it up. However, nothing compares to the post-credit scene of J. Jonah Jameson being played by J.K. Simmons as well. So they got J. Jonah Jameson in as the Daily Bugle presenter, because it's not a paper this time, it's like an online Infowars style show. But the fact that they got J.K. Simmons back to play the character, that was such a surprise. It was never mentioned, it was never hinted at during proceedings. There was talk that he could come in to play J. Jonah, but the fact that they did it and pulled it off without anyone knowing until they saw the movie, that was phenomenal. It's another nice little link to previous Spider-Man stories. And what it does by revealing Spider-Man's identity to the world is it opens up so many new possibilities. Now, I do have an opinion on that, because it ends with the post-credit scene of J. Jonah Jameson playing a video from Mysterio. Obviously, it's manipulated, saying that Peter Parker was behind all the deaths, all the attacks, and the death of Mysterio himself. So he's now basically been outed as a murderer. However, an easy and quick way to fix all of this is we obviously have the Skrulls on the good guy's side. You simply have a Skrull pretend to be Peter Parker, any public place, even a presentation, and then Spider-Man, who actually is the real Peter Parker, turns up. We now have Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the same place at the same time. Suddenly Peter Parker isn't Spider-Man, he's off the hook. Spider-Man isn't, he still has to overcome being accused of murder, but Peter Parker himself is off the hook, so he can now walk around unmasked. Spider-Man can hide until he shows that Mysterio was lying, and he can come back as a hero. While it does set up Phase 4, Spider-Man Far From Home has to settle for number 5. In at number 4 is another comic book style movie, though it's not based on a comic book. It is the anti-Superman Brightburn. This is directed by David Yarovsky. It stars Elizabeth Banks, David Denman, It has Jackson A. Dunn, Matt Jones, and Meredith Hagner. Again, it's quite a small cast overall, and what's great about this, I love what if stories, and the MCU is going to be doing a TV series. It's an animated, I think it's 30-minute episodes. It's an animated series of 10 episodes of what ifs from the Infinity Saga. So one of the ones I know for definite is what if Peggy Carter got the Super Soldier Serum rather than Steve Rogers. So what if stories are always pretty good, and what ifs on superheroes being villains, they're not rare. They're quite common actually. But Brightburn wears its what if Superman was evil on its sleeve for everyone to see, and that heart isn't filled with hope. Jackson A. Dunn is superbly creepy as Brandon Brightburn. He's great in this film, and the tension ratchets up over the runtime of the movie. Elizabeth Banks and David Denman are wonderful as his adoptive parents. Like with Superman, his ship crashed in the woods and these two adopt him as their own. And it avoids the trope of making them terrible, horrible, abusive parents as a catalyst and a reason for Brightburn to become a villain and do the bad things that he does. The fact that they avoided that is really well done. Like I said, it is a slow building movie. It builds and builds and builds, but once it gets going, it's relentless. It's in your face. The gore is, and I've used the word visceral a lot in this series. I don't think it's been more apt than it is here. This was visceral. This was brutal, nasty, none more so than the truck crash, which is darkly, comically brutal, on-screen nastiness, which I would say the truck crash is possibly the point of no return for Brightburn. And the film ends on quite a downer, but for all the right reasons. Setting up a sequel if they wish to go down that route. Or it can be left to our imaginations to wonder what's going on. Especially as at the end of the movie, Brightburn causes a plane to crash, and then he is a psychopath. He has no emotional resonance. He almost has no concept of right or wrong. He does to a degree because you see it in the movie, but at this point he's very much a well, nothing can harm me, nothing can come and touch me kind of thing. So he doesn't care. And that this movie has veiled references to Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter, along with a few others. It does allow for a potential sequel to show what they're getting up to. If it is left at this, that's fine. However, I would love to see a follow-up to Brightburn. From the first trailer, I knew I was going to enjoy it. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it this much. I didn't think it was going to be more than a quick, this was a fun what-if story, but the way they execute it is astoundingly great. The effects are fantastic. It doesn't pull any punches. And it's possibly the best What If Superman Was a Bastard film you'll see. Which begs the question, if we liked it this much, why is it only number 4? What could come after it that could supersede how much we appreciated this film? This is number 4. Number 3, and like Deadpool, there'll be some people questioning whether this is too low. Number 3 is a DC movie, but it's not in the DCU. It's possibly the most standalone a standalone movie can get. It's Todd Phillips entering the comic book arena with Joaquin Phoenix in the title role of Joker. This coming so soon after the Suicide Squad and Jared Leto's divisive take on the character. It was interesting to see what route they were going. This is a standalone movie. It's set in the 80s. There's Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, Joker. Zazie Beetz, who's been featured in the list before, Francis Conroy, Robert De Niro, Brett Cullen, Glenn Fleshler, Lee Gill, Bill Camp, and Shea Wiggum. This, setting it where it's set before Batman doesn't exist at this point. It's set in a Gotham City that is New York. A lot of people consider Gotham and Metropolis to be allegories from New York. This essentially is New York, but it's Gotham. And in this film, Joaquin Phoenix is a one-man tour de force as Joker. He is in virtually every scene in the movie. For virtually all of the runtime, he owns the screen, he owns the movie, and Todd Phillips' direction is equally as flawless. And while this is Phoenix's show, Zazie Beetz, Frances Conroy, Robert De Niro, and Brett Cullen all astound in their supporting roles as various characters who interact with Arthur Fleck through his life. Setting it in the downtrodden 80s when there was riots and strikes and a lot of other things going on was very inspired because it adds to the whole bleakness of the film, especially with the yuppies and the Wayne Enterprise employees and how they are viewed in comparison to the scum down in like the Narrows and the less desirable parts of Gotham. Visually, it's amazing. The soundtrack is sublime. Music enhances each scene that it's used in, whether it's actual songs or just backing score. Everything just works, with special mention to the dancing scene, which for a lot of people in the movie, that's where Arthur Fleck becomes Joker. He has crossed over at this point, and there's a moment where he has gunned down 3 Wayne employees in a subway, somewhat justified in self-defense for the first one, maybe the first 2, but definitely not the third. And he has crossed over and he becomes kind of elegant in his movements. He is becoming someone in control rather than someone with this condition that causes him to laugh uncontrollably. In addition to the settings and the locations and things, the wardrobe department deserve a ton of credit as well. The costume design in this movie is exemplary, not just for the Joker outfit that he wears at the end of the movie, that is astounding on its own, but just the clothing and the style chosen for everyone in the film. Arthur's mother, Arthur himself when he's downtrodden, the clown makeup and everything else. It just works. What also works is the unreliable narrator aspect of the overall story and the way it lends each viewer to have their own interpretation of what they're seeing. We're all seeing the same movie, but we're not all experiencing the same movie. That is a very hard trick to pull off. And in the comics, Joker is notorious for being unreliable as a narrator. So that in itself is keeping with canon. So now, when you watch the movie, especially if you watch it back again, you have to wonder how much or any of it actually took place. Was it all in Arthur's head? Was only some of it in Arthur's head? I have my theories because obviously Zazie Beetz' character is what Arthur believes is his love interest, but all their interactions was in his head, and that's shown in the movie to be in his head. Now, he's not going to unreliably narrate that aspect of it. So I do believe some events of the movie took place. I believe some of the events of the movie did not take place. Every clock in the movie is set at the same time, so that adds a bit of unreliability to what we're being told. And whether all of it took place or none of it took place, the performances are what matters, and this movie is excellent. Dark comedy is used to great effect in this film. From when Arthur drops the gun in the children's hospital to when he kills Randall in his apartment, that is vicious and comes from virtually nowhere. And then Gary can't get out because he's a short person, so he can't get out because he can't reach the latch on the door, and that's just absurd. But it's absurdist dark humour at its best. That is just the shift in tone for that entire scene is excellent, and that is when he officially becomes Joker. So from that point on, through the final act of the movie to the closing credits, to me it's the epitome of cinema as art. It's perfectly played on screen. The exchange between De Niro and Phoenix in the talk show set is mesmerizing, with the lead up to Murray getting what he deserves and being shot in the head on live television. That is acting from both of them, but Phoenix's performance in that, through the whole film, he's excellent. In that scene, in that diatribe, when he suddenly realizes he doesn't have to keep his emotions in check anymore, he can say what he wants, he can do what he wants, he is the Joker. That moment and that whole scene is just perfect acting. And Joaquin Phoenix fully deserved all the acting awards he got for this movie. He became the first actor to get the Best Acting Oscar for a comic book role, and interestingly, the only other time it happened for one of the major acting roles was Heath Ledger getting the supporting acting Oscar for The Dark Knight for playing the same character of Joker, so that is an interesting dynamic as well. As a standalone film, this is perfect. If they leave it at this, awesome. When they were making it at first, Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix thought it would be a one and done, but they both have expressed interest in coming back to do another movie. If they do, I would love it to be unreliable narrator Arthur Fleck telling a completely different origin story to Joker that he told in the first film. At that point, we would obviously realise nothing we saw in Joker happened, but it'd be interesting to see Joaquin Phoenix play a different version of the Joker, especially as in the comic canon there has been established that there's 3 Jokers, and there is a graphic novel called 3 Jokers coming out. So it would be interesting twist that that's what it is. It's an unreliable narrator telling his origin story to a different psychologist. However, if they did a sequel where it was this Joker following on from the events of this movie, I would be on board as well. I wouldn't be adverse to anything Joaquin Phoenix did with Joker at this point. There is nothing bad to say about this movie, and it is astounding that they managed to pull it off so well. It's also why we're now getting The Batman with Robert Pattinson. DC are embracing the multiverse now. That is amazing as well, so I'm very happy with that. And Joker takes our number 3 spot for 2019. Number 2 finds us back in the MCU. We're back with the Avengers, and as the climax to the Infinity Saga, it's Avengers Endgame. And again, this is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, and I'm going to be looking at my cheat sheet for the cast, because again, there's so many people in the film. So we have Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Daniel Guerrero, Letitia Wright, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Josh Brolin, Chris Pratt, Peter Dinklage, Paul Clemenchev, Karen Gillan, Vin Diesel, and Bradley Cooper. Again, it's an astounding cast, and again, none of them are supporting roles, although a lot of them don't appear till the final act because they were dusted in the previous movie. But everyone gives good superhero and good supervillain in this film. Following up Infinity War, especially with the downest of downbeat endings following the snap, that wasn't going to be easy. And of course, we knew the heroes would find their way back somehow, because obviously Spider-Man was going to have Far From Home. That was already being filmed, it was already scheduled, and already had a release date. So we knew at least Spider-Man was coming back. Black Panther was obviously going to be getting a sequel. So there was a lot going on there where we knew they were coming back. But it was the how of that happening that was the big question. Having the film open almost immediately after Infinity War, with the team still fired up to go after Thanos, they find out he's used the Infinity Stones again, they don't know what for, so they know where he is, and they go to get the Infinity Stones so they can bring everyone back. But when they get there, they realise Thanos used the stones to destroy the stones, so there is no bringing anyone back. And because of that, Thor finally goes for the head, and his weary "I went for the head" statement, that was a defeatist statement by Thor. And now Thanos is dead, so they have succeeded there, but everyone who got dusted is still gone. There's nothing they can do, which is an excellent subversion of what we were expecting. Thanos, the antagonist of this movie, the antagonist slash protagonist of the previous movie, is dead. They succeeded there, but they have failed overall. Thanos still won, as everyone has still dusted, half the universe is gone. Then allowing 5 years to pass. The world has lived in this post-snap world for 5 years. That was a smart move. And then Scott Lang, who, when you see Ant-Man and the Wasp, he wasn't dusted because he was in the quantum realm, which was outside the realms of Thanos' reach with the Infinity Gauntlet. So He is trapped in there, and for him it's only been like a couple of weeks. He ends up getting out thanks to a rat who is the actual hero of the Infinity Saga. He comes out, for him it's only a couple of weeks, so he doesn't know what's going on. He then realises that something's off. He sees this memorial, sees his name on it. He then rushes home, and the emotion on his face when he's running, and then he realises what's happened. Then he realises when he gets home that his daughter has grown 5 years, but she is safe. That is an emotional roller coaster, and Paul Rudd deserves all the credit in the world for how he plays that. Because he's normally there for the comic relief, he's good with the quips, but this was sheer emotion, and for pulling that off, he deserves all the credit going. Everyone else were great in their roles. Obviously, I've listed everyone in the cast list there. And the time heist scenes were well scripted, giving us a different view of events that we'd already seen before. They get the idea from Scott Lang having been stuck in time that they can use the quantum realm to time travel and go to where the stones still existed on Earth and around the galaxy. So the time heist scenes are great because we get to see things like the Chitauri attack, the invasion of New York, from a different angle. We see Professor Hulk having to denigrate himself and become Hulk and grr smash, and that's funny. The comedy moments are interspersed at timely points, no pun intended, so they don't overstay their welcome and they don't overshadow what's going on in the serious nature of what this movie is about. And the overall narrative is one where the Avengers are actually avenging. They're not saving this time, they didn't save. They now have to avenge, which is what they touched on. And this is another great piece of continuity, because in the original Avengers movie, Tony Stark told Loki that if we can't save the Earth, we'll damn sure avenge it. And that's what they're doing now. Loki also mentioned he becomes a time aberration because he does escape at one point with the Tesseract. It's complicated. Time travel always makes things complicated. All the time heist shenanigans and everything else lead us all back to the modern day, where we have all 6 stones. Tony Stark has built a gauntlet, a nano gauntlet. Hulk is the only one who can absorb the gamma radiation. Like he said, he was created specifically for this, and he snaps everyone back into existence. At the instruction of Tony Stark, they come back as they were. So for them, no time has passed, which obviously creates some age disparity as well. He couldn't bring back Natasha. He tried. He told Clint that he couldn't do it. He tried to bring back Loki. Couldn't do it. He tried to bring back basically those who were killed, not by the Infinity Stones, and he couldn't do it. Once that is done, and Hawkeye, who gets an excellent scene to introduce him as Ronin early in the movie, once that's done, Hawkeye gets a phone call from his wife, who has been snapped back into existence. The scene of his family being dusted right at the beginning of the movie is heartbreaking as well, and explains why he became Ronin. So he gets a phone call from his wife. We know everyone's back, but then suddenly Thanos attacks and blows up the Avengers HQ, leading into the climactic battle. What I love about the climactic battle is it starts with the 3 main Avengers: Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. And Thor has let himself go. He's depressed. There's a lot going on there. And what I enjoyed about this was when he Thored up, got his hammers, and what I did like is when he Thored up, when he got Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, got his braid and got his Thor armor on, he still stayed chunky Thor. That was a nice touch. He didn't automatically become big, buff, massive, muscled Thor. And then it's all 3 of them go to fight Thanos. And there's a great line from Thanos at this point where he says, "You couldn't live with your failure, and where did that bring you? Back to me." Thanos, this is young Thanos, this is 2014 Thanos, this isn't the Infinity War Thanos. He is much more aggressive, he wears his armour, he has this awesome spinning blade, and he kicks the shit out of all 3 Avengers. He totally annihilates them. And it's fantastic to see. Captain America wielding Mjolnir was a genuine whoop, hands in the air, clapping, cheering moment, including Thor, who knew it. That really changed the stakes. Captain America wielding Mjolnir, having the power of Thor with the lightning and everything else. He is then still subdued by Thanos and beaten down. And then everyone else is down. Captain America stands up. His arm is cut, so he tightens his shield, which has been massacred and mullered. It's like half a shield now. Thanos' blade is strong enough to smash through it. He pulls it tight because it's a tourniquet, because he's cut his arm, and he's about to stand alone against the entire army that Thanos has brought with him, including the children of Thanos who were killed in Infinity War, but again, this is time travel. Then he hears, "On your left," and that's from Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, the Falcon. It's a nice nod back to Winter Soldier as well. And the sorcerers open portals from Titan, from pretty much everywhere in the galaxy. So we have Howard the Duck's back. In a brief blink and you'll miss it. We have the Wakandans are all back. Black Panther's here. Shuri's here. We have the Winter Soldier is back. We have Spider-Man back. Doctor Strange is back. Everyone is here. And suddenly now we have the most climactic battle of them all. And it's the perfect culmination for a 10-year, 20-movie saga that they managed to pull off. It's what a climactic battle with all that backstory should be. So many characters, so many little moments, so many big moments, foreground and background. Captain Marvel wrecking shit upon her arrival. Thanos finally overpowering her by using the Power Stone. Wanda Maximoff giving Thanos hell for taking Vision away from her, even though he doesn't even know who she is. Ultimately leading to a tug of war with the Infinity Gauntlet that Tony Stark created with the nanomachines, which a lot of people believe was a dud. It could not be used again, which is why it was kind of like a setup for Thanos to get it. And that carried on. Thanos got it, but Tony Stark managed to secrete the stones out using the nanotechnology into his gauntlet. Thanos says he is inevitable. He then clicks the gauntlet. There's just the clank of metal. There's no flash. There's no dusting, because Thanos this time was going to dust the entire universe because he realized his failure was thinking too small. Tony Stark, then in a perfect callback to the ending of the first Iron Man movie, says, "I am Iron Man." That is the perfect capper to this entire saga. He snaps and all of Thanos' minions are gone. Thanos himself is gone, and finally the Avengers have avenged their loss in Infinity War, but at the cost of Iron Man himself. That he doesn't get a final line is heartbreaking, but it's perfectly done. Tony Stark, the man who always has a quick quip for every situation, after doing the sacrifice play, which is another nod back to the Avengers films, because they were saying that he himself he's not the guy to do the sacrifice play, and he did the ultimate sacrifice. He can rest now. He doesn't speak, and then he passes away. That we end with the wake of his funeral is a nice touch as well, and there not being any post-credit scenes other than just the sound of Iron Man smashing the anvil from the first Iron Man movie. It's a perfect end to this entire Infinity Saga. It also sets us up, because the Avengers now need to regroup as Phase 4 is set to begin, bringing new threats. I'm hoping it includes Galactus, along with the Silver Surfer. Kang could be a good one, because now they've meddled in time. There could be a reason why we have Kang the Conqueror. He realises that as the humans have time travel now, it is now his time, no pun intended, for Kang the Conqueror to come to Earth and conquer there. He is the master of time. Humans have only started with time travel. Should be a breeze. I'm also hoping Doctor Doom appears at some point as well, as they now have the Fantastic Four. The X-Men are also in there. So Phase 4 could go a number of different ways, although the movies and the TV shows for it are in place. I am excited to see what Shang-Chi can do, with us having the real Mandarin as well. That could be an interesting thing. But for now, the Infinity Saga is over. Endgame has passed. Thanos is defeated. And it's still not enough to be the #1 movie of 2019. Endgame is #2 for 2019. That honour goes to a threequel, a follow-up to two movies that have appeared in the series and on the countdowns and done very well for themselves but never got the top spot until now. Keanu Reeves is back as John Wick in John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. It's again directed by Chad Stahelski. It stars Keanu Reeves as John Wick, obviously. Halle Berry is new to the franchise. Lawrence Fishburne is back as the Bowery King. Mark Dacascos is in there. He is excellent. Asia Kate Dillon is also fantastic in here. Lance Reddick as Sharon gets a much more expanded role. Angelica Houston is in the film. Ian McShane is back as Winston. And Jerome Flynn, Bronn from Game of Thrones, or if you're a bit older, you may know him from Soldier Soldier, he rounds out the principal cast of the movie. It's bigger than the previous two movies in every way. Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves bring gusto to the action, while Halle Berry, Lawrence Fishburne and Ian McShane provide fantastic support. The world of John Wick and the assassins are also expanded. So in that situation, we get to find out a lot more of John Wick himself, including his real name, why he is the way he is, how he became to be known as the top assassin in the game, what the Assassin's Guild is all about, and so many other things there. It also ends exactly from where the previous movie finished. So again, with John Wick 1, 2 and 3, they follow on from each other immediately, which is a lovely touch as well. It gives a sense of urgency to this film from the off. Asia Kate Dillon is called the Adjudicator, a revelation in that role. Mark Dacascos is a character called Zero, and Mark Dacascos has been a favourite of mine for a very long time, including his turn as Eric Draven in The Crow, Stairway to Heaven, the TV series of The Crow. He is stunning. Lance Reddick, as I said, is given much more to do. He gets in on the action. And the only bad point of the movie is Jerome Flynn's accent. It's distracting, it's ridiculous, but luckily he's not in the movie that long. As you would expect from a John Wick movie, the action is top-notch. Long takes, wide shots. You get to see every hit. You get to feel every blow. You wince at some of the action. The knife throwing and the knife fight in one of the opening scenes is excellent. Killing a guy with a book has never been more brutal. And the gunplay, everything is just more than what we've had. It's more of John Wick and it's awesome. Seeing John Wick have a horse kick a man in the head is worth the price of admission alone, and the fact that they do it twice in the movie just is a cherry on top. Some killer twists, some literally, lead us to a finale that sets up John Wick 4 and gives us all the hype. It just sets us up so much to see John Wick 4. The last comment of the movie, the perfect end to this one. I think John Wick 4 should have started filming by now, but the COVID thing obviously delayed that. However, reports are saying they're going to now be filming John Wick 4 and 5 back to back. So Keanu Reeves has those and The Matrix 4 in the pipeline. That is exciting, along with Bill and Ted 3. Keanu Reeves has got the Midas touch at the moment. He's also the nicest man in Hollywood, and it's great for him that he has an action franchise that has taken the world by storm. It's universally loved. Everything about it, the score, the action, the cinematography, the choreography, the stunt work, the vehicle stunts, the physical stunts, the fighting. Mark Dacascos as Zero. Mad Dog from The Raid is also in here as a villain, and Keanu gets beaten up quite badly in this film. There's a lot going on in it, and it's an excellent capper to the trilogy that we've had already. It is the best movie of 2019 in our opinion, and it is going on to the final with the other 9 movies we mentioned at the beginning of the list to see which of those 10 movies, one from each year, is the best movie of the decade. I hope you've stuck with us through the series. If this is your first video, go and watch the other 9. The finale will be up next week. I am looking forward to joining you then. But for now, thank you for watching. Please like and share the video. subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We will see you, as I said, next week with the finale. Be safe, wear a mask, look after yourself, and look after each other. Goodbye.